Dit is In Context, de podcast waarin we dieper ingaan op onderzoek naar onderwijs. Ik ben Mario de Jonge, onderwijsonderzoeker bij het ICLON aan de Universiteit Leiden. We're sitting here today with Linyuan Wang, PhD student. Very welcome to the
Thanks,
podcast.
Mario.
So you're doing research. Your interest is in student engagement with blended learning in higher education.
Yes,
if I'm
that's
correct. You're currently working on a review paper, a review of the literature, and in parallel you're also conducting or have already conducted a study in which you are looking at the relationship between learner control and student engagement in study activities in blended learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is going to be like an open door question, but I have to ask it just for those who are not aware or who think they are aware, but have it wrong. What exactly is blended learning? When is learning blended?
Okay, as you mentioned, the definitions of blended learning, there are actually a lot of definitions of blended learning. And for example, that in an activity level, that you can always use some new technologies and to blend it with your traditional, setup or traditional activity, and that you can always address that as blended. And also in the course level, and you combine the traditional course with some other activities, you can also address them as blended course. And I think different researchers or different educational specialists, and they can have their own definitions of blended learning. From my perspective, in my paper, the definition of blended learning is the combination of online learning and also offline learning, the physical one. And the reason why I think it's very important is nowadays all the teachers or the institutions are trying to take advantage of online platform to better prepare students. So for me, it's not only about the definition of blended learning, it's also about how students prepare themselves for the class. So that is the definition in my paper. Of course, I think, different researchers, they can have their different definitions.
Yeah, but it is similar to the way I understand it. So having online learning and face-to-face learning in a combination that obviously an advantage to the student, because there are advantages related to blended learning above and beyond just physical presence. And can you say something about what kind of advantages there are?
Well, for example, for universities and blended learning kind of give university all these institutions an opportunity that they can just reduce the classroom time. That means nowadays that we have a lot of students, and some universities, they don't have enough space for all the students. By combining or involving blended learning, blended courses in university can kind of save universities a lot of money, and to just save the money for something more essential or more important.
Yeah, so it is cost effective then, basically. But are there also advantages in terms of learning or the way that students prepare involved?
Yes. Definitely. And for learning part, I would say that students, and if they can be very prepared to before they go to the tutorials or physical classroom, and they're more easily to get involved or engaged in all the learning activities in physical classroom. That will definitely be very beneficial for their learning also, and for teachers teaching. And I would say that before, without internet, all these online platforms, and teachers, they knew it was very important to prepare students before go to classroom. But that's the traditional ways to read some literature books, and sometimes it's just a little bit hard, but without internet, because with internet they can kind of just involve the video clips,
Oh, yeah.
and that's more I don't mean that's interactive, but you can see a real person in the video. It's maybe it's easier for students to just gather all the important information in 3 minutes. So it's also, that's efficient for their preparation.
Yeah, so because they watch those knowledge clips or the video clips beforehand, they come into class and they actually get more out of the face-to-face meetings. If that is that correct? If I'm
Yes, I think so. And if the teachers design the pre-class materials or pre-class activities in a very good way, and if all these activities before they go to the class are related to the activities they're going to do in the classroom, and then the student can get benefits out of that. But if it's just, that the teachers just separate or divide different activities into online parts and offline parts without thinking about the relevance between these two types of activities, I mean online and in physical classroom, that won't help much.
Yeah, so you're thinking that you have to put in a lot of thought to make it.
Yeah. The teachers actually, they need to think about which activity should be put into the online part and what kind of preparations they expect students to do. These are all very important.
Yeah. So I'm guessing, and this is like you were already discussing this a bit. So one of the things that you're particularly interested in is the student engagement. So I'm thinking that blended learning can be conducive for student engagement during the live sessions. We shortly talked about this. Now I can imagine that this is an important factor. And can you maybe explain shortly what do you mean with student engagement? So could you give some examples, for instance, how you know that students are engaged? So what kind of measures would you collect as a researcher to say something about the engagements of the students during the, for instance, face-to-face time in blended learning?
Well, there are actually a lot of different ways to measure student engagement from researchers' perspective. And for example, we can use questionnaires, and we have cognitive, emotional, and behavioral engagement. And we can just use this traditional classical questionnaires to measure student engagement. And also we can use like the online data to capture the students' engagement. That's more like the behavioral engagement. But there is already an article written by a researcher in the States, and he said, okay, all this online data is a reliable thing for us to also know their emotional and cognitive engagement. Also from the psychology department, and they also use some I don't know, they use some equipment to capture the students' attention. There are actually different ways, but I would say that from the teacher's perspective instead of researcher's perspective, student engagement is like, it's very noticeable to the teachers. If you go to a classroom and you see the student is following you or paying attention, you know that they're engaged in your class. So, that is also a question for myself, because the way that researchers usually measure student engagement, it's not the way that teachers to see or to perceive whether the student is highly engaged. How can we, close the gap, and how can our research by measuring all these things in a scientific way contribute to the educational practice, and I mean to support the teachers to improve the student engagement in classroom, not only in blended learning.
Yeah, so you're saying that for a teacher it might be more observational. So you're in class, and if the student is awake, then they're probably paying attention. If they're asleep, then they're obviously not. So that can be like a sign on the wall. I saw in the review paper that you also mentioned logging data. So I guess then we're talking about the online part and the engagement during that part. So can you say something about that? How you can use logging data to measure?
I think that is also related to what I just mentioned about the teachers, the observable data, like whether the student is awake. And login data is not like the questionnaire data, because the questionnaire data is actually based on students' perceptions. It's like perceived student engagement. And when we ask the student to fill out the questionnaire, it's kind of like it's not their actual behaviors. It's like their reflections. So the login data is like something they couldn't change. It's their actual behaviors. But there is also a problem regarding the login data, because we have multiple ways to interpret one number. Maybe the student was just bored, so he rewards the video clip several times while doing some other things at home. So we couldn't really say that, okay, this student is hardworking by seeing the figure, by saying the number. So it's also very hard. The reliability of the login data. So usually when we want to use the online data, we combine it with interviews and with questionnaires, just to triangulate all these things to increase the reliability.
Yeah, so these mixed methods are necessary to get a complete picture, I guess.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned about questionnaires, that also emotional engagement, engagement is a big part of it. And you also mentioned that maybe for future research might be interesting to look at the negative emotions that students experience. I thought that was the interesting take. So what kind of negative emotions are we talking about, and how do you think these impact the online part, for instance, or the offline part of blended learning?
Well, I think it's very important to focus on the negative part. Is sometimes I feel that, okay, I think I have learned a lot from the course. Maybe a student may say that. But at the same time, I don't really like it. But cognitively, I have learned a lot. Whether the cognitive engagement is aligned with the emotional engagement, it's a very interesting thing. Because are we only going to focus on the cognitive part, and if they have already learned something, or their learning experience, and whether they are happy about this is also very important. So it's usually, and in most research studies, and they concluded that the two things that they are just parallel, whether one is positive and the other one is also positive. But there are also some studies that the two things are totally opposite. And how can we handle the situation? What should we do about the kind of disalignment between emotional engagement and cognitive engagement?
Yeah, I can imagine that it's crucial. So what can we do? That's then again the $1 million question. Is also the next question that I have written down here. So, and then I'm thinking about, let's say that I'm a teacher and I want to make my course more blended. Do you already have like some general recommendations for teachers who want their students to be engaged within a blended design?
Okay. Well, I think the teacher, maybe you were the teacher, but I think the teacher should really think about why do you want to make it blended? So that is a more important question than, okay, I'm going to make it blended because blended learning or blended courses are trendy or popular. So think about what blended learning or blended course can actually bring something new or something maybe important to your course. If you have a clear idea of that and you know what to do, but if you don't see a real reason to do so and don't touch it, and just to really reflect on your teaching instructions part instead of thinking about I need to make a trendy course. So that is my opinion.
So you're saying that, do you think that a lot of teachers do this, that they make their course blended just to make it blended?
Well, I've heard that 2 years ago, I've heard that Leiden University is going actually had something like, we're going to be a blended university. I think then it's kind of like a policy-driven thing, and maybe a lot of teachers, they think, okay, maybe we should also make it more blended, then that can maybe reduce my workload or something. I don't know that much about their motivations of making their courses blended, but I do think there are a lot of teachers, at least in my home country in China, that they do the thing because they think, okay, the university actually asked us to do so, and yeah.
So I think this is interesting. So you're saying don't just make it blended to make it blended for the sake of it. So are there circumstances when you would say, well, it's not really necessary to make this a blended course, or I would leave it as it is, or?
Well, I think according to my experience, blended learning is just to better help students prepare before they go to the classroom. And if a lot of things are just about, that's maybe text learning or all these things, or the difficulty level in all these different activities, they're all the same. So I don't see the significance of making that a course blended unless the teachers wanted to, reduce his or her workload. So I would say that maybe don't go for blended learning if all the all the activity difficulty levels are the same. And I would say that classroom learning is much better than online learning.
Yeah, that's very clear. You also mentioned that you're a PhD student from China, and
Yes.
You were already touching, I think, maybe are there differences in an approach to blended learning between China and here in the Netherlands that you see, or are you more ahead in China? Is it more common to do it or less common? I have no idea.
I think here it's more common. And in China, it's like a lot of students, they have already had a lot of experience of online learning before COVID, because we have some private institutions to teach students to, for example, learn English, learn programming, all these things. And during COVID, and of course, in China, there were a lot of online courses, but blended learning, that's I would say that it is not that common, because all the students in China, they live in in their campus, and so they just, it's very easy for them to commute, so there is no a very urgent reason for them to change all the courses into blended courses. They're all in the same place. So I think that's a very practical reason why blended learning is less popular there.
For students on campus, they might have like just live, and other students have only online, but no blend. Then
only online. I would say that's most for the private institutions,
exactly.
Not for university. And for the formal education, well, there are some teachers, they're trying to do blended learning courses, but most of them, they are just trying to do that in campus. But I'm not very sure, because I didn't really have a lot of talks with my previous Chinese classmates about, do you have a lot of blended courses there? Because my research focus is here in the Netherlands. So maybe that's a very good question that I should really ask them. How many blended courses do you have, and what is the university's policy regarding blended learning?
Yeah, so you're already thinking about what steps you're going to take in the future, because that was actually my next question. So you're doing the review study. You have done this nice study where you look at the student engagement part of it, which was mere an experimental study, I think, or a correlational study.
Not experimental, correlation study.
Yeah, correlational. But what are your next steps? So what kind of studies are you envisioning doing in the future? So where do you want to go next with the project?
As I mentioned, that blended learning is the context for my research. I think in the last 3 years, I have already developed myself a lot of transferable skills which I can use in different contexts. Which I think really important in my project is that like I see the importance of preparing students before they go to the physical classroom. Maybe I think I'm going to focus on the preparation part or their activities outside of classroom. That might be my interest. I'm not very sure now, but maybe I will change in half a year. But yeah, for now, I think it's very interesting to see that the students what they do out of classroom.
Yeah, that's. I think that would be a very interesting venue for research indeed.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a lot. I hope the listeners as well.
Yes.
And I wish you all the best with your research.
Thanks.
Dit was In Context. De montage werd gedaan door Carla den Hartog. De muziek is van Robert Loeber. We danken je hartelijk voor het luisteren. Wil je op de hoogte blijven? Abonneer je dan op onze podcast. En deel het vooral ook met andere geïnteresseerden.